Hello again, it's Ricky Rich for Pokerology once more. This should be video 2 of 2011. And you see I've brought up the replayer again, but this time I'm just going to do a single hand. This is a hand I had um, in a $27 Turbo Knockout on PokerStars. Um, we were probably about 40 players away from the money. I think 126 or so was being paid. About 170 left. 175, somewhere in that area. So people naturally have been tightening up. There wasn't really as much limping going on as there would be early in one of these tournaments. Um, as you see here, the blinds 400 and 800. Antes were 100, so they are pretty big. We're eight-handed here, and I get dealt pocket eights under the gun. I went ahead and decided, since I've got about 16 big blinds or so, I elected to go ahead and just make a standard raise to 1800, which may have been the source of my initial problems. With these antes, large blinds, 16 big blinds, I might have been just much better off going ahead and open shoving eights. Sounds a bit much to some people, but believe it or not, it is pretty, well, I would call Nash friendly. Um, I really couldn't be outplayed by going ahead and shoving eights here. I'm, mathematically correct, as you might say, I suppose. However, I didn't, so we're gonna go ahead and continue on. Fully intending to call seat 4 and seat 7 naturally. Seat 6, seat 1 being a bit larger than me would naturally pose a problem, even if they were to flat, which probably gives another good reason to open shove instead. Then I've got 3 stacks here, 2, 5, and the appropriately named villain, who has a stack just under mine, which, as you'll see here, the villain gives me a problem by going ahead and shoving. The blinds fold, and it's back to me. Now what? Well, let's see. I can't sit here and panic. I had to, at the time, come up with a decision, and the only way I could do that is trying to determine not whether or not I felt eights was going to win or not. No, it was more of a point of how I felt my hand, pocket eights, would fare against his range of hands. I had to try to come up with an idea of what he could do this with. I had no actual reads on this particular person. Hadn't really seen him before to my knowledge. He'd actually been pretty quiet at the table to this point. So either he hasn't been getting hands or he's just naturally tight in this position. So what do we do? What do we put him on? How do we come up with a range? Well, this is where subjectivity comes into it. My opinion may be different from yours, but at least I'm going to come up with an idea of how to determine whether to call or fold here based on what you feel his range is and what our odds actually are. In this case, after he's shoved, there's just a little shy of 15k in the pot, 14,770 to be exact. And at the time, at the table, very quickly, I had to quickly determine what I felt my pot odds were. Very close. I thought very close to 3-2, which is a 40% equity. It's actually a little worse than that. It ended up being about 1-6. So 38% equity, which is a little worse than I thought. But giving they were close to the bubble and there is some value in that, well, all right, well, maybe we could have been very safe saying 40%. For our purposes, we're going to go ahead with the true odds. We're going to go with 38%. So, what can we do away from the table, like we're doing here, to try to come up with whether or not this was a good call or a good fold? I, at the time, elected to fold. I felt that his range was too strong for me to call with those odds. I felt that due to not only the fact that he was raising on the button, His stack was about 12 big blinds, 13 big blinds or so. Well, was it that high? Yeah, yeah, about 13 big blinds. He was maybe getting a little short, but he's certainly not desperate. Not like seat 4 or seat 7. And the fact he also still had two people behind him yet to act, which has a little bit of a effect on what he might be doing. And also, lastly, my position. I'm under the gun, and I am simply raising. I didn't shove. I didn't go 3x. I mean, I made which has been a fairly standard raise under the gun, which would normally show a pretty strong hand, which, in this spot, 8's pretty strong. Okay, so one thing to kind of give us an idea of what kind of range could possibly be happening, we could use a Nash calculator. This is more for strictly push fold, but it might give us a little idea, at least a little bit of information. As you can see, I've already pre-entered all the stack sizes ahead of time. I could have pushed as many as 15% of my hands at this point and been mathematically correct, assuming that everybody else is also playing mathematically perfect, which we know they're not. But here shows the hands under the gun. As you can see, I could have shoved any pair in a lot of these higher ace hands and a lot of the suited broadways, as I like to call them, and even Jack 9, 10, 9. And honestly, if I were given a choice of push fold and I couldn't raise, this is very close to the range of hands that I would have gone with. I might have chickened out on 2s and ace 10 here, but I know from a lot of the work I've done with pushing ranges that a lot of these hands are going to be good at this spot. 8-handed table under the gun, I know a lot of these hands are going to be good. Maybe 1 or 2 hands I might have elected to pass on. Then again, seeing that this Nash calculator does not take into effect that, hey, I'm about to be slapped by the big blind again next hand, maybe I should be going almost a little wider. But this is a safe range. Maybe even a little tighter even might be safe, because people are normally going a little too wide in calling to these earlier shoves, and they actually don't call quite wide enough on later shoves. But that's a pretty safe range for me. That's what I'm used to. That's pretty much what I've learned. Speaking of calling ranges, we can see where a mathematically correct call, assuming he knows what my opening range is, would include 7s, would include ace, jack. So, is that really his range here? I still don't feel that it is for the reasons I gave before. But we do have at least an idea of what he could have done, perhaps even if I had shoved. Okay, so that helps us a little bit. But what about figuring out what we can call with based on a range that we want to come up with? What do we do there? Well, there's another site that we can use, Pro Poker Tools. It's called the Oracle. As you can see here, you can enter in whatever range you want. I've entered in the, whoops, I boo-booed there. That's supposed to be ace jack. 7s and better, ace jack and better. Remember our equity we said was 38%. So you enter in that range and that equity, and this will tell you by math what you can call with. Doing that, we'll come down here, and we see that 8s are good against that range with this equity. Okay, well, does that mean I made a mistake? Not necessarily. Why is I don't believe he's that wide. I just don't. You may disagree. If you feel that this range is correct, you say, oh, of course he's going with 7s. Heck, he might go with 5s. He may go with ace 10 there. Well, then you would be correct in calling if you really honestly believe that's what his range was. I didn't. I felt it was 9s and ace queen. I just felt that way, like I said, maybe because not only his position on the button, but also my position, and the fact that it is close to the bubble. People do tend to tighten up. We're talking about your average player. He may not be an average player. He may be aggressive enough and play for the win enough that he decided to go with 7s and 5s and felt that he could get me to fold if he showed strength in that spot. Maybe he saw my raise as being one that would fold to pressure. Who knows? But anyway, this is the range I decided on. We'll click this, and we'll see what. Okay, now we see that 8s and 9s have been removed, and well, ace queen suited's good. Ace jack's no longer. I don't think ace jack was there to begin with, but we see 8s and 9s now are not in the range. So suddenly I'm correct, but it's all subjective to what you feel your opponent's range is going to be. In this case, I just really felt that there wasn't any way he could really have 8s or 7s or 6s or ace, even ace jack or ace 10. I just did not believe it. So I went ahead and folded. So as you can see, just a small change in his range, just a couple of hands that we added or took away from a range, swung our decision from a call to a fold. That's how tight some of these choices are. Again, back to our original decision, where I went ahead and decided to make that raise instead of maybe just open shoving and eliminating that extra decision that I had to make. I mean, it put pressure on me. I had to go and not panic and try to go through the motion of deciding his range, trying to figure out roughly right on the spot what about my odds were going to be and how my hand fared against that. Fortunately, I've done some math away from the table. I realized that I already know getting 3-2 odds. If I feel his ranges is 9 and better, then I know I can't call with 8s. I know I need 10s. If he was 10s or better, I know I need jacks. It's just kind of the way it falls most of the time. If I felt he could have gone with 7s, then I know I could have called with 8s. Same thing if I had ace queen here. If I felt he could go with ace jack, I already know by doing the math that ace queen, especially suited, would have been good enough. In this case, I just didn't feel that 7s were in his range, so I folded. But this could be used naturally in any spot. It doesn't even have to be near the bubble. It could be blind on blind, or it could have been various situations. But the idea is, your hand as it compares against your villain's range with the odds that you're getting, the equity that you have in the hand. This could have been vastly different if I was sitting in seat 7 with my stack and decided just to open raise like I did. Now if he's shoving from the button to a late position range, naturally my range for him changes completely. I'm thinking 8s would be an easy call. Not even a question. Didn't even have to really do the math because I already know that his range is going to be wide enough. He's probably, or most likely, going to go ahead and go with most pairs, if not all pairs, and a lot of aces, and even king queen and king jack for all we know. It's easily wide enough at that point. I don't have to worry about it. But I adjusted his range based on where I was sitting and what my perceived range should be. At least I felt should be. And how he may feel he needed to play according to that. That's all there was. That's how I decided to go about this hand. I feel a little better about my fold now, looking at the numbers. But you can argue with the range all you want with me as far as the villain goes. If you believe he can go with 7s, then I made a mistake. If you agree with me and think he's probably 9s or better and an ace queen or better, then you agree with me. We made the right choice and went ahead and folded. Waited for a better spot. But perhaps the biggest lesson of all, don't screw around with 8s under the gun here with 16 big blinds and large antes. Get it in, maximize your fold equity, and see what happens. Anyway, that's all for now. Hope this helps you to make decisions in the future on your own games. And we'll talk to you later.